As awakening deepens through the body, something subtle yet undeniable begins to shift. The sense of being a separate self at the center of experience begins to soften. What once felt like me, a collection of memories, reactions, tensions, and stories, gradually loses its solidity. This dissolution does not happen through effort or rejection. It happens because the body is no longer bracing to protect an identity. As the nervous system relaxes out of survival and separation, a deeper recognition emerges. Awareness was never contained inside the identity. Instead, identity was always arising within awareness. This realization is not philosophical or conceptual, it is somatic. It is felt as a softening of the chest, an unguarded breath, and a widening of the inner space where experience moves freely. As identification loosens, the body is no longer experienced as the container of a separate self. It becomes a living expression of the field of awareness itself. Sensations become less personal. Emotions lose their narrative weight. Thoughts appear like weather moving through an open sky. The center that once felt like I dissolves into immediacy, into life unfolding directly in the present moment. In this unfolding, the body and awareness are no longer experienced as separate. The body becomes transparent, a conduit through which the movement of source expresses itself. What remains is not a refined identity but the natural vibrancy of existence moving effortlessly through form. Life is no longer something you observe. It is what you are, aware of itself through this human expression. Identity does not disappear through force. It simply returns to the field from which it arose. Awareness remains as the living ground of being, and the body becomes the doorway through which that truth is lived. As identity dissolves into the field of awareness, something both simple and extraordinary begins to reveal itself. Sensation, once interpreted, managed, resisted, or pursued, begins to be experienced in an entirely different way. What was once treated as just the body, or reacted to as discomfort or pleasure, becomes recognized as the living pulse of existence expressing itself through form. Sensation is no longer filtered through the lens of identity. It is no longer something that defines a personal self, or confirms a personal story. Instead, each sensation becomes an intimate meeting with reality exactly as it is. Without the constant interpretation of the mind, the body reveals a direct and immediate relationship with life itself. A subtle warmth in the chest, a gentle vibration along the spine, a quiet expansion behind the heart. These are no longer experienced as ordinary bodily states. They become expressions of the same intelligence that moves through all of life. Sensation becomes a language through which the infinite communicates through the finite. In this recognition, the body is no longer something separate from the sacred.
Every sensation becomes a doorway into immediacy. Each moment of feeling becomes a meeting with the living presence that animates all existence. The ordinary becomes luminous. The simple act of feeling becomes an act of communion. Sensation itself becomes sacred, not because it is special or extraordinary, but because it reveals life touching itself directly through the body. When identity releases into awareness and sensation is recognized as sacred, the body begins to live in an entirely different way. It is no longer experienced as a separate self navigating life, but as an open channel through which life itself expresses. What once felt like my body becomes a living field of awareness, shaped into human form yet belonging to something far greater than the individual identity that once claimed it. In this awakening, the distinction between awareness and embodiment dissolves. Awareness is no longer something that must be accessed or maintained. It becomes the continuous ground of experience, quietly expressing itself through the movements of the body and the unfolding of daily life. Living becomes effortless because the body is no longer organized around defending a separate self. Ordinary actions begin to carry a different quality. Eating, speaking, resting, and relating are no longer simply personal activities. They become expressions of the same unified field of intelligence moving through all existence. Nothing needs to be performed or achieved. Life reveals itself naturally through presence. The awakened form becomes a quiet conduit through which the timeless touches the world. This expression does not appear through grand gestures but through the simple clarity of being fully here. The sacred and the ordinary merge until they are no longer distinguishable. What remains is a life lived from wholeness, a life where nothing stands between the body and the infinite intelligence that moves through it. Life is no longer something you direct or control. It is something that expresses itself through you, naturally, effortlessly, and completely. As awakening completes its movement through the body, the final illusion begins to dissolve. The sense that life is divided into separate parts, self and other, inner and outer, awareness and form, gradually loses its credibility. What once appeared as many things is recognized as expressions of a single, unified field of being. Separation is revealed not as reality, but as a temporary perception created by identity. In this recognition, unity is no longer understood as a concept or a philosophy. It becomes the direct experience of existence itself.
The breath, the body, the environment, and the movement of life are felt as one continuous unfolding. There is no boundary dividing awareness from what appears within it. Everything that arises is seen as part of the same living intelligence expressing through countless forms. The body plays a central role in this realization. Once it releases the contractions that created a sense of separation, it becomes transparent to the unity that was always present. Sensation, perception, and action are no longer organized around a separate identity. Instead, they move as natural expressions of the same underlying presence. From this place, life becomes profoundly simple. There's nothing to defend, nothing to grasp, and nothing to achieve in order to become whole. Wholeness is recognized as the very nature of existence. The individual form continues to live, act, and relate, but it is no longer experienced as separate from the totality of life. Unity remains as the only truth, the quiet recognition that the body, awareness, and the world are all expressions of the same infinite source moving through form. As awakening settles fully into the body, something profound yet deeply simple becomes clear. The journey that once felt like a search for truth, freedom, or enlightenment gradually comes to rest. What was being sought is recognized as something that was never absent. It was always present as the quiet ground of awareness in which every experience appeared. The completion of awakening is not the disappearance of the body or the transcendence of human life. It is the full integration of awareness and form. The body is no longer experienced as something separate from consciousness, nor as something that must be controlled, perfected, or overcome. Instead, it becomes the natural expression of the same intelligence that animates all of existence. The nervous system, once shaped by survival and identity, relaxes into a deeper coherence. Sensation flows freely without needing to reinforce a personal story. Emotions move without becoming identity. Thoughts arise and dissolve like passing weather. The body becomes transparent to the field of awareness that lives through it. In this transparency, life moves with remarkable simplicity. Action arises without the tension of trying to become someone or achieve completeness. Presence expresses itself naturally through speaking, relating, creating, and resting. The ordinary movements of life become the living expression of awakening itself. The somatic completion of awakening is not an attainment but a remembering.
The body reveals what was always true, that awareness and life were never separate. What remains is a quiet intimacy with existence, a life lived from the effortless coherence of being itself. As the final movement of awakening unfolds through the body, a simple yet unmistakable truth becomes clear. The body was never an obstacle to awakening. It was never something to transcend or move beyond. From the beginning, it was the very place where awakening was meant to reveal itself. Through every contraction released, every sensation welcomed, and every layer of identity softened, the body gradually reveals its deeper nature. It is not the seat of a separate self, but a transparent expression of the awareness that animates all life. What once felt like my body is now experienced differently. It becomes a living field of awareness shaped into human form, yet belonging to the infinite that moves through it. The sense of someone existing inside the body begins to dissolve. What remains is simply life moving, intelligence expressing, and love unfolding through the human form. In this recognition, the boundary between presence and embodiment disappears. Awareness is no longer something you return to or try to maintain. It becomes the constant ground of existence, quietly expressing itself through every movement, breath, and interaction. The body lives from this ground with natural ease. From this place, the sacred and the ordinary are no longer separate. Eating, speaking, resting, and relating all become expressions of the same unified field of life. Nothing is performed or achieved. Everything is simply revealed through presence. The human form becomes transparent to the infinite, a quiet conduit through which the timeless expresses itself in the world through the simple act of being fully here.
Hi, I'm Jim Daunt, and thank you for watching my videos. Just want to let you know the videos from the last about 2 months have all been based on my new book. It's coming out March 31st, it's both on Kindle and on paperback on Amazon, and it's now available for pre-order on Kindle if you're interested.